Okay. All right, cool. Looks like we're live. So, hi everyone. My name is Liz Eggleston. I run Course Report, which is a resource for students who are researching coding boot camps and data science boot camps. So, if you haven't yet, check out Course Report. We've got hundreds of interviews with alumni and instructors, thousands of reviews of programs around the world, and even some really cool webinars and video interviews like this one. So we hear all the time about judging coding boot camps and data science boot camps based on their outcomes, aka getting students jobs, but we rarely really get the perspectives of both the boot camps and the employers at the same time. So I'm really excited to have our guests joining us today. We've got Megan Aero and Brennan Biddle, and Megan is the head of careers at Metis, which is a data science boot camp in New York, San Francisco, and now in Chicago, right, Megan?
Yes, that's right.
Awesome. And Megan's helped develop the 12-week careers curriculum, which is concurrent with the bootcamp curriculum at Metis, and does a lot of post-graduation support for Metis students as well. And then Brennan is a data science and data engineering recruiter at Capital One Labs in New York, which is an employer partner of Metis. So it can be really difficult to sort through like job placement rates and stories about bootcamp grads who have gotten jobs after graduating. So Megan and Brennan are going to answer all of our questions about how Metis prepares future data scientists for their first jobs and how an employer like Brennan can hire effectively from a coding bootcamp like Metis. So I'm really excited to get all of my questions answered, and let's dive right into them. So maybe first, Megan and Brennan, can you just tell us a little bit about your roles? Like, what does it mean to be a data science recruiter right now? And likewise, Megan, what does it mean to be the head of careers at Metis?
Megan, I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So thanks, Liz, for putting this together. So as the head of careers at Metis, I work with all of our students, and then once they graduate, I work with all of our graduates on helping them best find and best align their job search with the current data science market. Mm-hmm. So as you mentioned, I've built a curriculum that goes alongside our data science curriculum, and it's all about developing you in your career and getting you prepared for your search post-Metis. So we do a lot of workshops that are built into the 12-week boot camp. We do one-on-one meetings. We do a lot of mock interviewing. We bring speakers in who are data scientists in the community to help kind of shine a light on what data science is like in their companies. Mm-hmm. And then I organize a career day at the end of every boot camp. And so we invite employers to come in, meet our students, network. It's a really great hiring opportunity. And then I work with all of our students individually with my career advisors, who are amazing, by the way, giving them a total shout out, to help find our grads amazing jobs.
Are there different career advisors in each of those campuses, New York, San Francisco, and Chicago?
There are. We have a career advisor in New York, Jen, who is awesome, and we also have a career advisor in San Francisco. His name is Andrew, and he is equally fantastic, and we will soon be hiring a career advisor in Chicago.
Cool. When does the Chicago immersive start?
We'll start in the fall.
Fall? Okay. Awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Brennan, tell us a little bit about what it means to be a recruiter right now in data science and data engineering.
It's great. I think the hard part about it is that the term data science just means a million different things to a million different people. And even internally within Capital One, like, we're a big machine. And so different groups in different corners of our business define a data scientist as something different. And so I think the hardest part is finding the right candidates that match up with those specific needs of each individual group within our organization, and this is and where those technical strengths lie.
Brennan, you were mentioning that data science is a pretty new role to begin with, right? So are there at Capital One, are there baseline requirements that you have to be a data scientist at Capital One? Like, do you have to have a certain type of degree? I think that's something we can be worried about.
Really good question. Really good question. So one thing about data scientists here at Capital One, and I can't speak to everywhere, but here at Capital One, we want our data scientists to essentially wear like a research and development hat coming into the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason I say that is because this is the most random, diverse, crazy, eccentric group of people you will ever work with. Just sitting in my little pod alone, we have a neuroscience PhD, a math PhD, a former high school math teacher. So no, there's not one specific type of person or background, either personal or professional, that we're looking for. I usually tell candidates the weirder background you come from, usually the more successful you'll be as a data scientist here at Capital One.
I think that's really cool, and it actually kind of aligns really well with boot camps, because pretty much everyone who goes through a boot camp has a past life, right? Whether that's having a PhD or it's having a really interesting past career. So yeah, that's really cool. Megan, when you go through that process with students, like we hear a lot about like imposter syndrome right now. How do you sort of coach students through incorporating their past lives with their future lives as data scientists in just 12 weeks, I guess, is how much time you have with them?
Yeah, I know it's not long, but that is definitely a common problem that comes up, and so we work with our students a lot, not just in groups, but like I said, with our workshops that we do on different topics within careers. But we work with our students a lot one-on-one, so not just kind of the one-on-one pep talks, but we do a ton of one-on-one mock interviewing. Mm-hmm. We do that both technical, so we actually bring data scientists in and have them actually go through a real live mock interview, as they could expect in the real world. But then we also do non-technical mock interviews. And I think that helps build a lot of confidence in really the soft skills and how to present your background and tie in your past life to your new life as a data scientist. And it's amazing to see that transformation, because I think a lot of people come in and say, well, I was a math teacher in my former life. How could I possibly tie that into data science?
Right.
And we see it as career advisors so clearly that there's such a connection, but it's really just about kind of helping them develop that narrative, practice it, build the confidence, and then be able to tell that story to employers.
Right. Brendan, who are the Metis graduates? Have you hired Metis graduates?
We have, yeah. We've hired a few.
What types of roles are they going into at Capital One Labs? Is it like a junior data scientist role? Do y'all have that type of role at
Yeah,
Capital
we do.
One?
It's hard to say because like a junior data scientist, I want to make sure that we're branding it the right way. I mean, what we're looking for are people that have a really strong foundational data science background, as far as someone that is probably really good at Python, has a lot of exposure, or at least a little bit of exposure to working in a Hadoop framework, someone that is interested in functional languages. So we do have junior level roles that don't pay like junior level roles, but where we do anticipate someone that we can grow and mold and develop. And we find that places like Metis do a really good job of building that foundation that we can build upon as well.
Yeah. How did you end up meeting the students that you've hired from Metis? Like, was it at that career day, or did you like go in and guest lecture at Metis? How did you meet those?
The answer is both. And so Metis has had a few cohorts, and we've been working with them through them. So we have had data scientists go in and introduce themselves to the cohort, tell them what they do, a little bit about the projects they're working on. The last cohort came in for like a career day type of thing, where they came in and saw our office space and got to interview and ask a lot of questions of different data scientists on different teams. They have a career night that we attend every single cohort as well. So at this point, we have a pretty good relationship with them at different stages in their process.
That's awesome. I think I get a lot of questions from employers who are like, how do I navigate the boot camp hiring market? How do I hire from boot camps? And I'm like, get involved as soon as you can so that you actually know the students by the time they get to career day, because I think that's really important. So I love that y'all do that.
And a lot of it is building brand within the boot camp as well. Now that we've started hiring I guess, students out of the boot camp, we're starting to build a bit of a reputation. And by bringing people in to see our space, telling them about the projects that we do, I think that we're starting to generate a lot of interest there as well.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So Megan, you mentioned a little bit about what y'all do to prepare students for that technical interview, which I think can be really nerve-wracking. So I want to talk a little bit about what goes into a technical interview for a data scientist, because we talk a lot about what goes in, to a technical interview, whiteboarding for coding, for, web development. But what does a data scientist technical interview usually look like? Are they whiteboarding? Are they just doing like portfolio review? And Brennan, I guess we have you here too, so this is great from both sides.
Sure, it's a good question. I see employers do things really differently. There is a lot of overlap from coding interviews for software engineer roles to data science. So I see most of our grads having to do some level of whiteboarding. Getting up, they may not be doing necessarily, coding on the whiteboard, but it might be, kind of walk me through a solution. How would you approach it? How would you get to, an answer? So I see a lot of that. So we bring in people to do whiteboarding practice. They do whiteboarding practice almost every day in the boot camp. They do pair programming. So they feel comfortable doing that with an employer. On an interview. We also see people doing a lot of case studies as part of the interview process. I think that's just huge. It's just part of the data science kind of world. A lot of those, sometimes those are in the office, sometimes those are, take it home, come up with your findings, and then be ready to present it in front of an audience at the interview.
Cool.
Communication is such a huge part of data science, so that's really evaluating that piece as well as the logic and the technical skills as well. And then also portfolio review as well. So at Metis, the students build 5 projects along the way so that they have this robust portfolio to show employers. So yeah, I see kind of a mix of those 3 things happening.
Brennan, of those things, for the students that you've hired from Metis, like what really stood out? Like, why did you hire the students that you did? Did they have like insane portfolios? Did they totally crush the technical interview? Or was it more like soft skills and culture fit, I guess?
I would say, I hate to give a fluffy answer, but it really is a mix of all of them.
Cool.
Our interview, it's like a 4-step program, if you will, and I warn our candidates that there are times during our interview process that you're going to be asking yourself, am I interviewing for a software engineering job or am I interviewing for a data science role? Because we really do test those Python and Scala type of skills for our candidates. But, our interview process is pretty detail-oriented, and so by the end of it, we have a good feel for their analytical abilities, their software abilities, their mathematical abilities, and their culture fit as well. And we try to paint a nice picture to make our final decision on our candidates.
Has it ever been a concern, or actually I don't know the backgrounds of the students that you've hired from Metis, but do they have like traditional computer science degrees, PhDs, that kind of thing?
Good question. Megan, I don't believe they do, the people that we've hired. I don't think they come from a traditional computer science background. And by the way, generally speaking, of our data science community here at Capital One, not many of them come from a traditional computer science type of background. I mean, in our PhDs, I tell people, and it's true, we legitimately have a PhD in theology all the way through to astrophysics and everything in between. So a few of those are computer science type people, but not all of them. And the people from Metis, I don't believe came from a computer science type of background.
That's really cool. That's cool.
I was just gonna add that one person has a master's degree in math, so relevant for sure, but not comp sci. And then the other person, I'm blanking on her exact degree, but she actually had a bachelor's degree.
Cool. That's really cool because, I mean, if you dig into Reddit, you'll see a little bit of like tension between the like computer science degree versus a boot camp, and it's really cool to hear that actual like legit Capital One Labs is a legit employer, and that's not being factored in as heavily as you might think. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Brendan, how do you all sort of ensure that new hires at Capital One Labs are supported as they continue to learn after they graduate from Metis?
Yeah,
I think that's a
question.
huge question from a lot of graduates. Yeah.
Absolutely. And on the flip side of that, I think that's the hardest thing for me to portray to candidates as a recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
And, so Capital One, we have a large community of data scientists all over the country: San Francisco, Chicago, New York, DC, Dallas. And so that community of data scientists is really supportive. We know most of one another on a first name basis. We have our own internal big data big data academy as well. Every month or every quarter we have meetups internally where we all meet in one city and catch up with one another. So, Capital is a great place to work as a data science or as a data scientist. And for several reasons, but the one that's hardest to portray and hardest to come out during our interview process is that community and that little niche, if you will, within the Capital One culture. Capital One is a really big company, but as a data scientist, it feels more like you're working at a big data startup with around 100 to 200 people, as opposed to a huge bank with 50,000 employees. So they all know each other very well. Here we eat lunch together every single day. We travel to see one another all the time. So it's a really tight-knit community of people.
That's cool. I love hearing about Big Data Academy too, because it's cool to hear actual established learning opportunities after a graduate starts with a new company. That's awesome.
Right.
Megan, when y'all, as Metis is building their employer network, are you looking for things like that in employer partners? Because it can be tough for a bootcamp graduate to go into their first job as this new, technical role. How do you ensure that your employer partners are the right fit for your graduates?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we definitely look out for, and we hope to partner with those types of companies. We see our students and our grads being selective for those types of opportunities as well. Unless they're coming to Metis with a lot of professional experience already under their belt, which we definitely do have that profile of candidate. They may be okay in maybe a less mentorship-driven company. But to find an employer like a Capital One Labs is just so awesome for our students. We've also started working with employers on building out apprenticeship programs. Cool. And that has been very successful, and really the model works as an 8 to 12 week, maybe even a 16-week apprenticeship where they can come in, work on real projects for the team, but there's a heavy mentorship component to it, and they can get up to speed in more of a comfortable kind of but accelerated pace. Cool. And then they come on full time and they're kind of ready to go and ramped up.
In your experience, not only Capital One, but with all of your graduates, do you see most Metis graduates going into straight up data scientist roles, or are there other types of roles that students can get when they graduate from Metis? Thinking data analyst, I guess, data engineer. Do they go into those pretty much?
Yeah, the title we most often see is data scientist. From there, I would say data analyst or some sort of analyst position of some variety, and then from there, data engineer is usually about the third one we see. Cool.
Megan, I'm curious from your perspective. This could be a huge question, I guess, but what have you seen your most successful Metis graduates do differently that really sets them apart as candidates for data scientist roles? Is there something that really stands out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the people that I see most successful, and I guess it's how do you define successful? Maybe in my eyes, it's within the first month or two of graduating, they're landing a competitive data scientist position at a company that they're super passionate about. So I think I would define that as success. So when I see people following that path, they have been incredibly engaged during the bootcamp, not just totally all in with the data projects that they're building, but they're all in with careers, and they're just soaking up the advice and all the tidbits of information that we put out there. And I think that then they are, juggling and kind of balancing a lot of, or spinning multiple plates at once. So they're, building their projects, they're learning, they're involved with their career, the careers team, they're getting their resumes together, they're interviewing, and they're sort of juggling everything, which is so much and a lot to do. But they're able to handle it gracefully and confidently. And then after Metis, they have a plan. They're not, kind of taking a few months to just relax. They're aggressively attacking their search and taking all the advice that we've given them and totally utilizing their network that we've helped them build, and kind of just going after it. I see those people fielding the most offers, having the most options, and feeling most successful out of Metis.
Do you recommend that students start applying for jobs the second they graduate from Metis? Do you recommend that they start before they even graduate? Should they wait a couple months after they graduate to improve their portfolio? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's all up to the person's, I think, personal comfort level and own timeline. But we see a lot of people starting to kind of get a little antsy about their search around week 9 of the boot camp. So there's 12 weeks, so about week 9, they're starting to feel like, I want to get my list together of target companies that I want to start applying to and researching. And so I see around that time they may start putting out some applications and start getting some coffee meetings with hiring managers going. And then certainly, by the week of career day, they're starting to more actively apply. And I think that's a pretty good timeline to start things off.
Yeah, that sounds like a great timeline. So it sounds like Metis and Capital One Labs have found a cool partnership just from talking with both of y'all. But I think one of the coolest things about boot camps is how iterative they're able to be, and when something goes wrong or there's something lacking in the curriculum, they're able to actually iterate on that really quickly and add it. Do y'all have a nice feedback loop with employers? And Brennan, have you experienced that too? If you notice a new hire is lacking in one subject, are you able to give that feedback to Metis?
Yeah, well, fortunately or unfortunately, we haven't seen any gaps to relay
That's
back
good.
to them. But I know,
Right.
but yeah, Capital One is involved, and we have a relationship with Metis on several different levels. We partner with them in all kinds of different ways. So there's a nice give and take between our relationship as far as helping them help us and vice versa.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say we have a close partnership, and it's been great to work with them. They've definitely given us some awesome feedback on Career Day, and that has certainly evolved drastically over the couple of years that we've been running boot camps. So it's just awesome to get that advice, because they're the ones that we're doing this for, and
right.
Their feedback is so important to us. That
is awesome. Brennan, will y'all hire for Metis in the future? I'm going to assume yes from your other answers.
That's the plan.
All right, cool. And Megan, I'm curious from your perspective, working in careers at a boot camp, have y'all started to think about, there's a lot of talk about how to report outcomes, methodology behind that. Is Metis planning on, I know that y'all have great job placement rates, are y'all planning on putting out any audited reports, anything like that anytime soon?
Yeah, I think we're definitely thinking about that very seriously. We're actually accredited by a company called Asset, and so we have to go through an audit process frequently. We have to submit verified employment data once a year. So our numbers are very much accurate. And if they weren't, they would shut us down. So we are under very strict guidelines on how we report that data.
Cool, fair enough. Brennan, last question. What is your advice to other employers who are thinking about hiring from a boot camp or from Metis in particular? Like, have you found the secret sauce to navigating through hiring from boot camps?
You know, it's hard to say. So the hardest part about hiring from boot camps is that they essentially open the floodgates, and all of us potential employers are all trying to find the top talent from the boot camp all at once. And so the hardest part for us is having a interview process that is that is really selecting the top talent and really making sure that they are the right fit for our role, but then also being fast enough and agile enough to work with these people as well, because there's so much competition for this talent. So I would say starting early, building a strong relationship with the boot camp, and then building out a process that can effectively and quickly hire the right people.
Awesome. I think that is great advice. Yeah, because I imagine as an employer, you sort of have to tailor your interview process to boot camp grads a tiny bit, just to make sure that you're getting good talent without excluding people who don't have a very traditional background in all cases. So yeah, that's cool.
Right.
Amazing. Well, I think we just covered a ton in 30 minutes. That was incredible. Is there anything that we totally skipped over that either you, Brennan, or Megan want to make sure our course report readers know about the process that y'all have put together?
Not that I can think of.
I'm not thinking. I think we covered a lot, and yeah, it's just been great working with Brennan and the Capital One Labs team, and we look forward to more partnerships and continuing the relationship, and hopefully getting even more Metis grads over there at some point.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Megan. Thank you, Brennan. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Let us know in the comments what you'd like to see our next webinar or live Q&A about, and we will see you at the next one. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.